Power Gen Asia, so that's why I have to be in the middle of that. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah. Is there any background disturbance you are facing?
No.
No, right? Yeah.
So we have 3 more minutes to go, and we are also waiting for Mr. Lokesh Kumar Jinage to join us. So we have Mr. Lokesh also joined us now. Very good morning, Mr. Lokesh. Mr. Lokesh Kumar. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Lokesh Jinga.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning.
Morning. So I think, Mr. Neeraj, can we start the session or?
Yes, Mr. Mehta, we can start the session now. Over to you, please. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, and good morning the participants from India, and good afternoon to the participants from Myanmar and other countries. Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Sabarinathan, Associate Director from RGK Pleasure Group. We are the thermal generator, thermal IPP, and a transmission and distribution company in Myanmar for the last 25 years. We have been running 60 megawatt gas generated power plant on a long-term basis, and we have been partner for the development of LNG to power project in Myanmar, and we are looking for the footprints in the green energy and rooftop solar system. And let me introduce the participants. Mr. Dinesh. Mr. Dinesh is from Yoma Group, and he's been with Yoma Group for the last 5 years, and he has a real experience on the grounds for CII industry and rooftop solar system and microgrid solar system in Myanmar, and he could share his experience in the on grounds in Myanmar for the microgrid and CII business. And we have Mr. Harish. Mr. Harish is from India, and he have experience in the utility size solar system, and he will be sharing us his experience on utility side solar system. And we have Mr. Lokesh from Adani Group, and I think you are from the investment side, right?
Right.
Green energy investments. Yeah. So, as a brief description, brief introduction on Myanmar. Currently, Myanmar has the energy mix with hydro with 62%, and thermal gas with 20%, and thermal coal with 1%. And recently, Myanmar is looking on the green energy development and looking to put the solar system as one of the sources of energy that can feed the requirements of Myanmar. Talking to the in the region, everybody talking about the net zero, decarbonization, and carbon neutral. So all these things is looking Myanmar to move forward in the same direction of net zero, solar, and hydro. So in the solar, there are recent tenders coming up with the solar for the size of 30 to 50 megawatt on the utility scale, and there are 50% of the country is out of the grid, not connected to the on-grid system. So there are opportunities for the off-grid, microgrid based solar systems and other renewable energy sources like wind and other sources of renewable energy. So I'm moving this session to Mr. Dinesh. I have some questions on. I'll keep some questions to Mr. Dinesh.
Yep.
Just a moment. So you have been working with the Yoma Group, and then you have experience in the microgrid and CNI industry in Myanmar. So I just wanted to know, how has the microgrid and CNI industry has changed in Myanmar over the past 5 years? what is your prediction for the next 5 years on this industry?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, Myanmar is almost 70% power deficit, and almost 89% of the population is not having reliable grid in the country of Myanmar. So I see a lot of potential in Myanmar for off-grid solution, because national grid definitely will not be available for the next 5 to 10 years unless Myanmar government decides to invest on transmission lines and sub-grid substation and grid stations. And definitely, like you are saying, 30 megawatt is the pipeline for solar, but that is not sufficient for Myanmar. Myanmar will definitely need big megawatt solar plants. Like one tender was there, I think, couple of years before, 1 gigawatt, but that was quashed because of certain reasons. Yeah. So off-grid, definitely microgrid is the
So
only solution for Myanmar for next 5 years.
what is the size of off-grid you are looking, you're talking, you would suggest for? What is the size?
Yeah. So off-grid plants, what we are doing is our power plants are scalable. So what we do is first we analyze what is energy requirement in that particular off-grid area, and then we size our plant, initial plant accordingly. And we have seen like there is energy demand has grown multifold in 3-4 years. So we are upgrading our plant because our plants are all modular, so we can just add PV, add inverters, and add batteries. So our power plants, off-grid plants, are functional for 24 hours. It is not only like it is generating only during solar hours. So what we do is we generate from solar, support the grid, support the load, and balance energy goes to the batteries. So we have multiple technologies batteries at different places. And after solar hours, we use this battery energy for the load. So that is basically our model. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, I think
Mr. Sabrinathan's
yes,
end of network is.
His screen is frozen. Chabri,
Yeah.
your screen is frozen. So you're probably hearing us, but your screen is frozen.
So I thought it is bandwidth issue from my end. So I'm now in Philippines. So
Okay.
came to the one of our ongoing site, and I'm sitting in the car and talking.
I think your network is perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
so Sabri has dropped off. I think there is some network issue.
Yeah, let's wait for him.
Yeah.
Okay, he's there. Mr. Sabrinathan is there. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so your question was like, what is our size of the plant? So plant is actually from the PV per se, our plants are varying from minimum 10 kilowatt to approximately 350 kilowatt peak solar, depending on the load requirement. So all plants are upgradable. So we have rolled out already 600 plus microgrid power plants in the country, in Myanmar.
So, how do you see the demand every year? How you are scaling up? What is the percentage of scale up you are seeing every year?
So every year we have, so this is again a very capex intensive. So it needs a lot of money to roll out. So we have invested approximately $58 million already. in the country to make 600 plus power plants. So these power plants, some are having only one load, that is telecom load. Some are having community load also nearby. So it is a kind of a mixed customer base. So we call it like A, B, C. A is anchor, that is telecom. B is business, and C is community. So we cover all kind of businesses in the microgrid space. So year over year, if I see, it is approximately 20-25% growth, which is substantial growth. Yeah.
Thank you. And what are the challenges you face during this for when you feed to the, because I think for the telecom and telecom and business, you won't be facing any much problem. But when you feed to the community, what are the challenges?
So there are a lot of challenges post COVID and post this political turmoil in the country, Myanmar. So I'll talk about few common challenges which are actually related to not only microgrid space. These challenges are actually related to even utility or CNI projects. So by the way, we have done approximately 8 megawatt of CNI projects, that is rooftop plus ground mount projects. Total numbers are 8 in total. So different capacities, starting from 7.5 kilowatt rooftop to 2.5 gigawatt ground mount as well. That is in the CNI space. So challenges we had to import everything. I'm talking now current challenges. Past is past, and past was really very exciting. That is how we have reached in 5 years with $68 million of funding from IFC, Norfund, and ILA Group. And after that, those sanctions, we don't have any funding available from other World Bank, and arm of it is IFC. So Norfund is also backing out for investing in the country of Myanmar. Okay, so import, we do everything in the currency USD, but our revenues are in MMK now. So if we have to pay back our investors in the currency US dollar, this is actually a big challenge in current scenario. And we cannot operate our USD account, though we have still sitting some, few $1 million available in our account, but still we cannot operate by our own, though it is our money. We have to still take permission from the government to use our own dollar. So this is actually a long taking process. So if we have to import something from any other country in US dollar, we have to seek permission from the government, which is a long process. And yeah, it's a big challenge. I'm just talking about, very practical issues which we have been facing. And shortage of USD in the market as well as in the bank. So it is hard to convert MMK into USD, Myanmar chat into USD. Very difficult, because banks and in the market there's a shortage of USD. That is why value of US dollar is strong, very strong in Myanmar versus Myanmar chat. That is a few weeks before, it has gone up to 4,500 Myanmar chat versus $1.
Yeah.
When I came to Myanmar in 2017 April, that time the value of the Myanmar chat was around 1,200, 1,300 chat, $1.
Yeah.
So import license also is a big challenge. Again, if I had to import something, I have to apply for import license, and the validity of this import license is arbitrarily changing. So initially they said 30 days validity of import license. If I apply something, get approval, means 30 days. Within 30 days, I have to get that material in the port. So it is very difficult. I have to place purchase order, I have to pay, they have to manufacture, they have to ship, and bring it to the port. So now they have done for after that 45 days, now 90 days. But still 90 days, in my view, it is not sufficient. Okay, so
This is a
recently this
common,
foreign,
actually, Mr. Dinesh,
these
this
are
is a
all
common
common
challenge.
challenges,
By common
common
challenges
challenges.
faced by every business in the market for this moment. And then I think government is looking for
Yes,
some
yes, yes.
how to make it make it easier for the business. On the other side, what are
Yeah.
the challenges from the off-taker side? This will be good input for the investors or the opportunities who are looking for the opportunities in Myanmar. What is the challenges from the off-taker? Are you guaranteed for the off-taker payments?
Yeah, so we have anchor customer that is telecom tower company. So we have long-term PPA with them, and we keep getting money. But only challenge was earlier we were getting money in US dollar. Now we are getting our revenue in MMK. So because they
Okay.
also don't have any funding in US dollar, so again it is a big challenge for us. Our all revenue is coming in MMK. So yes, we have a long-term PPA guarantee, and our land acquisition is also long-term with the landowner. So it is in the tune of 20-25 years, and our PPA is 15 years, and that is renewable. And what our model is like, whatever they are spending today, we supply them cheaper power in terms of the TCO, total cost of ownership. Whatever they spend in their money into the diesel or maintenance or replacement of batteries, etc. We offset everything and still supply them a cheaper solution for energy.
Thank you.
That is the biggest challenge.
So
Other challenges, if I count, like uh, now it has happened, like there are sabotage, theft, and vandalism on our solar site, and we understand because of poverty and because of unemployment and because of people, they need money and they have to sell something. So it's okay as far as
it's very difficult.
if we talk about human, I mean we can't do anything about it. Yeah.
So the last question to you, and what do you advise to someone who is interested in the C&I business and the rooftop business or micro trade in Myanmar? What would you advise to them who is looking for the opportunities in Myanmar so that they can or to attract investors to Myanmar?
Yeah, so
What would you
not
advise?
to definitely scare anybody because of my bitter experiences, but there is
Yeah.
a potential available, big potential available in the Myanmar, because this country has some good things, like land is cheap, resources are cheaper, right? And there's a potential available for energy sale, whether it is for industries, whether it is for households or for telecom. In this country, Myanmar, approximately 13,000 telecom towers are running only on genset. There is no grid available. So huge potential in this country. So far, we have done only 600 sites of telecom. So we can understand, like, there's a huge potential. Yes, but it is capex intensive. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dinesh. So now I'll pass on to Mr. Harish on the utility scale projects. Recently, I mean, since 2020, Myanmar is looking forward on the solar, and then they form some reforms on that, and then they issue the tenders. There are Chinese companies who came in, participated for the bid, and got awarded for like 4 cents to 6 cents, and uh, and due to some challenges in the last 2 years, they all withdraw it, and some projects are still moving on. And on the utility scale, there is a current project which is already connected to the grid for 130 megawatt. This is a very old project since 2017. And and recently there are again the tenders are coming out for the 30 to 50 megawatt scale, wherever the substation is ready to take in. So now the questions will be like, what would be the attractive point for investors to invest on those projects? And what is based on your experience in India now? India is also moving on the RE renewable energies, more into solar, and there are subsidies given to those solar projects. So, what would be your inputs and what would be your attractive points for them to bring in the investments to Myanmar?
Thank you, Mr. Shabri Madan, and also good to have my other co-panel, Mr. Lokesh from Adani, Mr. Dinesh Gupta from Yomo in Myanmar, and also thanks for Neeraj Sharma from CII to organize this wonderful meet. And this is a very important topic, and there's a lot of collaboration possibilities between India and Myanmar with respect to renewable energy. In fact, the last two sessions, the opening session and also the plenary, there's a lot of discussion on how we can collaborate on energy, renewables, agriculture, education. So, but this is a very important topic, and there's a lot of scope for us to collaborate here. And yeah, your question is interesting. So the question is, how do we improve the comfort of the investors globally to invest into Myanmar? And I'm going to add to it, how do we attract Indian businesses and investors to come into Myanmar and invest into renewables? And also I'll touch upon solar, where there's been a lot of action the last couple of years. You mentioned the upcoming tender as well. And we'll talk about how we can implement that successfully, given that the last couple of tenders have either been cancelled or have been postponed. So we'll talk through that. So yeah, so one is we can take learnings from India in terms of giving land comfort to our investors, setting up solar parks in Myanmar. Of course, the need is more so for your 30, 40, 50 megawatt type of solar parks, right? So which will need probably about a couple of hundred acres. But if you give that land, assured land to the investors, to developers, that gives them more comfort to invest into Myanmar. India has lots of experience there. India has about 25 gigawatts of installed solar under the solar park scheme. So we can draw upon lots of expertise from India on this in terms of how to set up these solar parks in Myanmar. One is land security. Second one is evacuation infra, right? So with a solar park, that is assured that developers have the evacuation infra in place. So along with grid impact studies, ESI, all these studies are already done in a solar park. So which means that the developer comes in with the investor, and it's a plug and play opportunity, right? And I think in one of the early sessions, we talked about how to bring on local investors. I think in the law of Myanmar, sovereign guarantee is already included there. So that gives comfort to the investors. On the PPA, we need to have it bankable. That's very important. And I think Mr. Dinesh also brought this up. I think we need to have take or pay arrangement in the PPAs, meaning that whatever the generator generates has to be taken up by the off-takers. So that's a very important clause, which talks about the priority of dispatch. Take or pay is a very important clause to be included in the PPA, and this gives comfort to the developers and the investors globally as well as from India. So, end of the day, it's very important for us to balance the risk allocation between the off-taker who's taking the power in Myanmar, developer who's coming in globally, and also the lenders, right? So we have to balance out the risk between these key stakeholders. We talked about PPA being bankable. That's very important. Long-term tenure is important. I think the last tender had this at 20 years. That's good. So we can look at 25 years, which is makes it better. Payment in USD is always good. This attracts the global investors. This has been talked about recently with issues in forex demand for USD. We can also have a dollar indexed PPA, wherein you pay in local currency. That's a possibility. And to attract the Indian investors, we can even think about having PPAs in rupee. I think this can be also be considered if there is a way to have a PPA in rupees. I think this will attract Indian investors into Myanmar. Termination rights have to be well captured in the PPA along with compensation. Other important point is in case of arbitration, of course, you don't want to go there, but that has to be done outside of Myanmar and well captured in the PPA. This gives overseas investors comfort that in case of any arbitration, it happens outside the country. So, and then we need to have very clearly defined construction permits, licensees, and process of authorization. I think it's very important, and this has to be clearly laid out in the process of the tendering itself. Yeah, going to the tendering process, I think there were some learnings from the last tendering process. I think we can improve upon clarity, being more transparent, and with timelines which are clearly laid out. I think this can be addressed in the upcoming tender very clearly. So yeah, so these are some of the more key points which I think are very important to actually attract global investors into India. Specific to India, I want to add a few more points. Sunil Sethi, who is the president of the Indian Myanmar Chamber of Commerce, he mentioned about getting a delegation from Myanmar into India, right? So, and having talked to the Indian businesses, Indian leading companies, Indian EPC, and there's a lot of information which can be shared amongst these various companies between India and Myanmar. So it's good to have that delegation come from Myanmar to India. So that's important. And there's also a mention by the Indian ambassador to Myanmar. I think there was a steering committee meeting held last week between the respective power ministries, where they talked about a few aspects. What was how can India Myanmar collaborate in terms of helping Myanmar improve their transmission infra? And there was talk about how knowledge can be shared by our Indian businesses, Indian EPC companies, developers like Adani. They can have a lot of knowledge with businesses, developers in Myanmar. There's also a labor shortage in Myanmar, right? So there's also a skill shortage in Myanmar with respect to renewables. India can play a role there. They can play a role in upskilling skills in Myanmar. So some of these points came in the last few sessions today. I thought I should also highlight those in this session. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when talking about the PPA, those inputs are very good. And regarding the indexing by US dollar, it's of course it's been done in the current PPAs too. They are offering you can offer them in US dollar, but they will pay you on the current exchange rate, the central bank exchange rate in Myanmar currency. So the problem currently we are facing in Myanmar is there are two rates. One is the central bank rate and one is the market rate. So this has to be sorted out by the government, so which is they are working on it. And regarding the Indian rupee to Myanmar church to Indian rupee, there is a bilateral discussion going on between the Central Bank of Myanmar and State Bank of India. They are working very closely how to have a Vostro account in India and between India and Myanmar and make the transaction, because as you saw in the previous session, there was $800 million of exports from Myanmar and $5 million of imports from India during the last year. So they are closely working on it. And regarding the delegation from Myanmar, India Myanmar Chamber of Commerce is working very closely on it. Whenever there is an opportunity, we are planning to bring them to the 4 main cities of India, like Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta, and Delhi. Again, regarding the discussion of the embassy with the Ministry of Power from India, we will closely follow up with them for the outcomes, and we will see the opportunities what Indian companies can bring in to capture those opportunities. Coming back to Mr. Lokesh, so Adani is the biggest investor of solar parks in India, and how do you see Adani will be looking on the investments uh, in Myanmar, and what will be your contribution and what will be your tracking points for that?
Yeah, so good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to the people in Myanmar. Yeah, so as a lot of ground has already been covered by Mr. Harish regarding what we expect from the from the policy side of it, and just to grow this sector. So I think these are the learnings that we have from the Indian market, and these needs to be implemented. And if these are executed well, then certainly the sector can grow. And as Dinesh ji had mentioned that about the country is about 70% power deficit, so which makes it such a large market to cater to. And I think I was reading few reports where it says that I think renewable energy penetration right now is about 8% of the electricity, and it is slated to grow further. And like what we are seeing in India, there is a tremendous renewable energy growth that is happening. And since Adani Group being a fully integrated company, we are one of the largest transmission player as well, with roughly about 13,000 circuit kilometers of transmission that we are operating and executing. So we can also help in stabilizing the grid at Myanmar, which is one of the frequent issue that has been raised by the developers over there. Because if you ought to have renewable projects, large scale utility projects, then you need to have a stable grid, which is reliable and it is available at your interconnection points. So because renewables has a peculiar problem that it has to be the offtake has to be there as and when it gets generated. So it's not like thermal where you can, or a gas where you can just switch the tap off for some time if the grid is not available. So whatever energy is generated, it goes west if the grid is not stable. So I think clearly we have to work together in terms of we need to take the learnings from the Indian market. So in the Indian market, at least the policy side has always been very clear, and a lot of support that has been given to the industry, whether in terms of bankability of the PPAs. There was a complete new organization was set up by Government of India, which is called Solar Energy Corporation of India, and it has been given and pretty much most of the PPAs are done through them. The bidding process is organized by them, which is fully transparent. So a lot of global players can have a trust and faith into the system, that how the bids are happening and how the PPAs are being executed. And then those PPAs are serviced also in a very transparent manner. So that gives a lot of a lot of capital is available across the globe to come into this developing sectors. However, you need to give them the assurance that it is being put to use in a very transparent and a very laid out through a process which is clearly laid out, and it is being executed well. So that's one of the things. So Indian government has always been very clear in terms of how to de-risk the business, and they were always looking towards growth of the sector. So initially, when the cost used to be high and then the tariff also used to be high, that time also they had given an assurance that and then they brought in this renewable purchase obligations for the discoms, and it ensured that at least whatever PPAs that are getting signed even at a higher tariff, those will also be honored. So even today, the industry even started somewhere around 2009-10. At that time, the tariffs of 18 rupees were discovered. And even those PPAs are being served even today when the tariffs have come down to 2 rupees. and all these PPAs are being serviced. So that shows that that shows the kind of a bankability of the PPAs, irrespective of whatever the tariff is. Once it is discovered and once it has been put out by the regulator, those PPAs are being recognized and executed well. So similarly, then government moved to a VGF scheme where the tariff was fixed for the discoms at 4 rupees 50 paisa, and then everything else was the developer was supposed to quote VGF, and that VGF was given from central government grants. So that is also one of the mechanisms through which you can reduce the overall burden on the consumers and also support the industry. And today the industry is at such stage that we don't need any of the subsidies or support for the utility scale projects. And similarly, as Harishji has mentioned regarding the solar park scheme, so that has also helped a lot of foreign capital come into country, where the land and evacuation was provided to them under a plug and play model. So these are different learnings that we have from the Indian market, and I think the policy certainty and efforts to make it more transparent and de-risk kind of a platform, if we can provide in Myanmar, then certainly there is a huge growth potential which is available, and we need to work onto it. And certainly the on the bankability side, a lot of options that Mr. Harish told us regarding either dollar PPAs or a rupee denominated PPAs, because in that case you also de-risk the banking related risk. So if it's an Indian rupee PPA, then you can have financing also coming from Indian financial entities, and that also helps because the Indian entities are well known to the Indian lenders and Indian financial institutions, so that the capability check is already there. There is a trust in the different entities which are executing the project, so that way it also helps. So these are the few initiatives that I think if we take, then certainly it will be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Neeraj. I have a question to all the panelists. Considering like Indian Embassy and India Myanmar Chamber of Commerce takes the initiative to work with the Ministry of Electric Power to form the framework and policy, take the good points from India and form the framework for Myanmar. How do you think the opportunity on the solar on hydro for the offshore solar?
For offshore wind, Shabri?
Yeah, because there are so many hydro reservoirs, so the solar plants on the reservoirs.
Yeah,
because
floating solar.
hydro,
Floating solar. Okay.
floating solar system. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So how do you think the opportunity in the floating solar system? Because there are 62% of hydro resources in Myanmar, and all are the reservoirs, and those hydros have the capacity has been lower during the summer. So those grids are still available when during the summer season to take in the solar. So how do you think the opportunities in that?
So can I speak about it? Because we have done some study on floating solar. So in fact, floating solar in Myanmar is not commercially viable. Reason being, land lease is cheaper than the infrastructure for floating solar. So this is cheaper. I mean, land, ground base or rooftop or these kind of solutions are cheaper than floating solar.
Yeah, I want to add a few points here, Mr. Shabri. Interesting one. 60 hydro plants in Myanmar. So you would think that there is scope to put panels on those reservoirs, right? But floating solar becomes necessary when land is scarce, right? So and India is certainly doing a lot of floating solar recently. Many tenders coming out on that. And for one, floating solar is complex by design. You have to understand the site topography. You have to understand the water hydrology issues, right? And typically, floating solar is about 15-20% more expensive in terms of normal solar. Capex is more. Operating costs can also be more in case of floating solar, because you have to deal with water and all those things. Level of water becomes very important. You have to have a certain level. But then if you have the transmission infra already in place, then the viability of floating solar becomes more compelling, because your infra is already in place, so you can use that to actually add floating solar onto reservoir. So, but I think for Myanmar, to start with, they should keep it simple. They should look at increasing solar in the country. Potential for that is over 50,000 terawatt hours. So they should look at first. Potential for wind is about 4 gigawatts. They should look at first. I heard earlier today that there's also scope for biomass in Burma. So we should look at these options before we start looking at floating solar, offshore wind, even adding storage, which is actually very important as you increase renewables. Bring about grid stability is also important, but I would say at this point, even keep that simple. Start your initial tenders with pure solar, implement that successfully, then start looking at storage, offshore wind, floating solar.
Yeah, certainly. So as Mr. Harish has rightly pointed out, so till the time you reach up to 25 to 30% penetration of solar, I think the base of the plain vanilla solar makes sense, because only from the cost perspective. And once you have an economies of scale and a large capacity already installed, then these variations can be explored. However, it's really good to know that about 60% of your electricity is generated through hydro. One benefit that it can give is that you, if you have either floating solar or a solar nearby to an hydro site, then basically it can you would be able to offer a combination solution which can reduce the intermittency because of solar. However, that is not a challenge in the grid as of today, because the penetration is still low. But as it moves beyond 25%, then you can see some of this combining, because hydro, you can still play around with the dispatch schedules. So when the solar is available, you schedule from solar, and later on you do it from hydro. And we can also look at if some of these reservoirs can be converted into a pump hydro system, where during the day you use the solar to pump it up at some other reservoir, and then take it back, so that during the night time also you can consume the benefit from the solar. So these are the few combinations that can be done, but each of these are very project specific. We'll have to study each project individually and then see what can be done. And certainly, as of now, I think plain vanilla solar and the off-grid, as Mr. Dinesh has pointed out, that for next 3-4 years, I think off-grid would make more sense till the time the grid stabilizes. By that time, we can do the grid augmentation as well as solar parks creation, and then we can enter into the next phase of growth.
Thank you, Neeraj. Sorry, thank you, Lokesh. I think we are almost in the end of the session. So, is there any other inputs you like to give to the participants? Or
Yeah. So one input for CNI, we have not touched CNI in this discussion. So one issue with CNI is there is no net metering policy available in Myanmar. So what happens? We have to prepare or design a plant, solar plant, fitting to the current load situation. And then some of the factories we have seen, we have made their solution as per their current load. But what happens, like some of the days they are not working. They have holidays or weekends. That time that energy is just going away. So there's a solar curtailment. So if there is a grid tie system available, net metering is available, they can sell this energy, whatever they are generating, to the national grid. So I think this we can take it up with the CII or IMCC to get some kind of policy framework in Myanmar.
I want to add,
certainly,
I want to add one more. I want to add one more point here. Yeah, net metering is important, as Mr. Dinesh mentioned. And right now, Myanmar has this rooftop solar. For CNI customers in Myanmar, we can also look at having open access, like we have in India, where you set up a solar plant remotely, and through the grid in Myanmar, you can wheel the power to the respective commercial or industrial customer. Something which we can look at implementing in Myanmar. India has over about 4-5 gigawatts of open access customers, and for solar, more for hybrid, more recently using it to offer RTC round the clock power to CNI customers. That is something we can look at in Myanmar, taking a lot of learnings like goodies from India.
yes. Certainly, Mr. Dinesh, yeah, I was about to talk about that, but because you are all talking about the grid stability, so whether this home solar system to feed in back to the grid will be feasible or not. So that's why I didn't start this topic. And again, thank you, Mr. Harish, for pointing out this. Because recently during my India visit also, I was able to capture those information, like setting up off-grid solar and connecting to the grid and selling to the CNI customer directly with the direct PPA with them and reminding we sell to the grid. So this policy, this framework, we can share with the Ministry of Electric Power and to the policymakers here, and really they will be interesting on it. So this will give an industrial revolution in Myanmar because the industries are really struggling a lot on the stable power supply to them, because there are some industries we know that while operating, even it was stopped for 5 or 10 seconds, the whole process has been suspended. So what they do is they don't rely on the power supply. They run the generator when they use those processes. 24 hours they run with the diesel generators. So those, if we can promise some kind of sustainable, stable power to those industries, really it will be interesting, and we will be able to. We will try to set up a meeting with the ministry and policy makers to form a framework, and let's see how we can move forward. Thank you. Mr. Lokesh, any input from your side?
No, I think I'm fine. I just I just wanted to understand more from Mr. Dinesh on to how the typical C&I segment in terms of the payment track records. I think he had talked about the telecom operators and then the long-term PPAs, but how about the rest of the industry and their payment track records? What his experience has been onto that?
Yeah, so we have long-term PPAs with CNI customers as well. So that is also a minimum 15-year PPA. But situation is like that. Some of the companies they are not willing now. I mean, to commit for next 15 years PPA. So they are now looking for some 3 years kind of PPA, which is actually not good for us.
Yeah, it's not
because we, if we see our even break-even point or payback period, it is 5 to 6 years. Then 3 years is not actually good for us. So we are still talking about minimum 10 years PPA, so that we also make some money maybe after the the payback period.
Right.
Yeah, but big industries they also want to take risk, and they are still interested. So we are working with them. So recently we have completed 2 big projects. Big project means from the CNI perspective, 2.5 megawatt, and another is 1.9 megawatt. That is, both are ground mount. And good thing is their captive consumption itself is high. So even on weekends or holidays, that solar curtailment will not be there. So whatever we are generating, we are able to get revenue out of it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Nilesh, is there any Q&A from the delegates?
No, sir, nothing. So that's it. We may.
Okay, so I think it's time to close the session. Thank you for all the participants.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much.
It was a
Thank
very
you very much.
knowledgeable session.
Nice to see you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Good day.